Hey, this is Laura Whitmore with the She Rocks podcast, and I'm here in New York City today with Anna Egge. So excited to talk to you.
Thanks. Good to be here, Laura.
Yeah, great. And I was introduced to you through a video, I guess, that I premiered for you on Parade.
Yeah.
So let's start with that. We Are One, right?
We Are One
was the song. And
I think so.
I
think we are.
I was very moved by it. And
Thank
I
you.
listen to a lot of music. So can you share a little bit about the story behind that song and the recording too in the church in Brooklyn?
Yeah. Well, the song came from that momentous kind of coming together worldwide with so many humans looking up at the moon coming in front of the sun of the eclipse, and how so many people who might think that they are so different from each other were all doing the same thing in such a positive, forward looking up way, and witnessing in awe this, something that was much bigger than us, that kind of humbled everyone all at once and brought us all together. And I was so moved by that, as so many people were. And it felt like I wanted it to last a lot longer, much like other experiences after trauma, after 9/11, the coming together of so many people, and how many people just kind of decided to override their egos and help others. And I mean, it wasn't even, sometimes it's not even like a decision. It's just we find our better, bigger selves, and that was a moment like that. And I thought it was a great place to start from in writing for a song.
I remember that moment so clearly. I was in New York City during the eclipse, standing on the steps of the library near Penn Station, and watching the solar eclipse and wishing that I had traveled to somewhere where it was total,
right?
And it was super moving. There were so many people out in the street just watching, and I scrambled to find some eclipse glasses so I could see, really see it. It's very, very cool. So I get that emotion. That's very cool. I didn't know that's sort of the origin of that.
It was the beginning of it, and just I feel like often I'm, as the world seems to kind of be in more and more crisis, I feel more and more drawn to this deeper sense of my responsibility or duty as a person being here, which is something about doing good and I don't know how, but I do know that something has to do with the songwriting and the music coming through me. One of my friends just simply said, "I know your superpower. It's songwriting."
I mean,
don't get so confused by it, Anna, he said. I was like, oh, well, maybe, okay. So, but anyway, that song, yeah. And then I took that idea of that first verse to my friend Gary Nicholson, and we wrote the whole song together in Nashville a couple of years ago. And he's a very loving, deep, kind person, and we immediately mind melded over it and wrote it in an afternoon.
Earlier when I got here to the studio, Dick was telling me how you were in the process of working on an album, and that song didn't necessarily fit with what you were doing, but you felt the need to make that come together, I guess. And
yeah, it was even more. I just felt that the need to immediately record it and put it out. I felt like I could not wait.
Yeah,
for it to be done for the album. And I've also never felt that about a song.
I'm getting emotional.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. I mean, it really, maybe it was something bigger channeling through you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really very cool. So how did it come together at the church in Brooklyn that you shot the video at?
Yeah, the Brooklyn First Unitarian Universalist. When my daughter and my wife and I were on our way to the Women's March a few years ago, the big, huge one, we were going to the one here in New York City. My wife had to stop over on the way in Brooklyn to drop off something for work in Brooklyn Heights, and our daughter was 3 at the time, and Roxy's her name, and we went and we were waiting at the subway for my wife to come meet us, and this whole group of people walked past us, and I don't know how else to say, but they kind of looked like my people. And I was like, oh, and they were kind of waving at us and then said, we're going to the march. Are you going? Come with us. And I said, we'll see you there, but we're waiting for one person, and then we'll join you. We'll see you on the subway. And then I said, where are you from? And they said, we're from First Unitarian. And I was like, oh, note to self, And then we went to the march, and, it was such an amazing, once again, huge gathering for good. Massive movement. Oh, so empowering and beautiful. And then, so that night when we got back home, I turned to my daughter and I said, that group of people that we saw when we were waiting for Mommy at the subway, do you want to go where they go tomorrow? Which was Sunday. And I'd never been there, and I've never been to, any kind of service here, and I was not like a churchgoer or anything, but I've always been very, I guess, spiritual and a searcher kind of inwardly. I've studied a lot of different religions and spiritual practices, but my daughter said, yeah. And so we did. And then I was really moved by the minister there, Reverend Anna Levy-Lyons, and really actually very moved by her. I find her quite brilliant. And I kept going. And I still go. And yeah, and so then the band and the music director, there was a band there, the drummer sometimes had played with me, and I saw him there one service. I said, whoa, John, you play here? And he's like, whoa, Anna, you come here? And one thing led to another, and he invited the music director, Adam Pott, out to one of my shows, and then Adam asked me to sing a song with the choir, one of my songs called Rock Me, and it was such an amazing experience. It felt so incredible. And then I guess somehow this whole idea to record We Are One live with the choir happened, much in thanks to Dick Gannett, the person who owns and runs the label Story Sound Records.
It is kind of amazing when, like, all of a sudden you find your people. Mm-hmm. It's like a palpable thing. You feel that energy, like, wait. That's happened to me before. I've met somebody and immediately known that they're the right connection for me.
Yeah, I don't know what to... It's just kind of wild, and it's not... It's such a different thing when people are going somewhere with such good intentions, not because they have to or need to. And when there's no... I don't know. It's like there's a rainbow flag and Black Lives Matter posters. There's no patriarchy. It's all inclusive. It's not like you can't go if you love Jesus, but that's not a prerequisite. Do you know what I mean? Mm. It's so, things are so intense because of so much wrongdoing and horrible things that are done in the name of religion, that I have a hard time even saying the word church or God.
I totally understand.
Do you know? Yeah. And at the same time, I have this deep knowing of love that holds all of those ideas somehow, and all of those feelings.
How I'm sure that gets incorporated into your writing and your music, and has your music evolved because of that relationship that you now have with that group of people, or is it just sort of like an constant inner searching that comes out in your music?
It's interesting because I think I've had a big shift in my life, which has been much more focused on community and being more engaged and involved with others than I have in the past, because of being a parent, I think, and then finding myself in this congregation and wanting to be more and more involved in lots of different tons of different musical collaborations. Mm-hmm. It's very fun. I don't know, it's like I got over myself.
Were you more focused on sort of being a solo artist before that?
Yeah, and
just working in your own space?
I think there's a certain matter of like a bit of kind of preciousness or protection that I was brought up with that wasn't serving me anymore because it wasn't serving others.
Yeah, interesting. That sort of opens the door to like so many things that you didn't even realize you didn't have or you didn't see, you know?
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, it's very cool. So you had an album come out last year, right?
Yes, September.
Yeah, September. So that was pretty recent.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about that? Was that something that you developed, you know, while you're experiencing all this at the church and with groups?
I don't know if it's direct, you know, but it certainly was something that really happened kind of, I don't know, I've described it kind of like a fever, like it really, a lot of the songs were just like really just there, just immediately had to write them. I mean, I had the experience of literally having to relearn them after recording them. Like, what was that chord I was playing? I mean, really.
Because it just blazed
really.
from you.
and seriously, they were like that.
Yeah.
And all of the kind of things I heard in my mind for, you know, having brass come in and play, and it was a very unique experience recording. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that? How was it different from what you've done in the past?
I think it was like a lot. It was very little removed from when I would write the song, immediately record it, immediately have it happen.
So you didn't play them anywhere before you just went into the studio and...
A couple of them I did. I had around for, but months only. Do you know?
Yeah.
Just really, because the record White Tiger that came out before that only came out like a year and a couple months before.
Wow.
So,
wow. And the name of the recent album?
It's called Is It the Kiss?
Right. You know, it's funny. I listened to it recently, and there was a song in there. You know, I just did this event called the She Rocks Awards, and one of the artists that we honored was Lizzie Hale. And there's this song on your recent album that I was like, this could be like a metal
which
song.
one?
It was called...
That's so cool.
What did it... Hurt a Little?
Hurt a Little, yeah.
A Little. And I was like, I could hear Lizzie Hale doing like a metal version of this song. I thought it was so interesting. And I did kind of love how... You know, a little bit varied. Your writing and your style was on the album. So after you recorded it, then you went out and played the music?
Yeah. Well, you know, we recorded and then mix and master it, and then we wait a few months for everything to come together for it to actually be released. And in that time, I had to learn the songs again. I was like, wait, how does this, what key? What did, you know, what did I do here?
How am I going to do this live? Yeah. Was it a challenge for you to sort of match the energy on the recording live? Or
it was actually literally the chords. I mean, I had to go back and listen to my demos of when I wrote them before I recorded them.
You didn't write that down?
Usually, I mean, that's the thing. That's what's different about some of the songs on this record. There was not a lot of wood shedding. It was just like, here's the song, let's do it right now. You know, there was no remove.
How did you feel about that? Was that a good feeling to just like...
It felt like I was on a ride. Yeah. It felt like I just was giving myself over to whatever the music, whatever was happening.
Yeah.
And it felt very exciting. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's almost too like, you've been doing this for a long time and you trust like what your instinct is for what the song needs to be. Right?
Yeah. And you know when it's right.
Yeah.
Because you know when it's not.
Yeah, right. I think that's the thing that, you know, I'm a songwriter too, that we all grapple with. It's like, is that part okay? Like, if you have to ask that question, then it's not
Then
okay.
it's not, exactly. It's like, compared to what? Compared to who you know. Compared to Bob Marley. Compared to whoever you really think is the best.
Or compared to just you.
Yeah, whatever.
what you know you're
good?
capable of.
Yeah, exactly. Is it what's happening? Yeah.
Do you do that? Do you go back and, like, rewrite stuff a lot when you're working on music, or... not really.
You mean, well, once it's recorded, it's, I mean, it has to, that's what I mean. It has to feel, I have to know that it's ready to record it. But then when you're recording it, it also, like, you know, the parts, they have to be right. They have to fit the track.
Yeah, and sometimes somebody else will come in, or you'll hear something else.
Sure.
You're like, wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
This needed to go here.
Yeah.
Let's change it.
Oh, yeah. And then sometimes you have a whole string part put on, and then you're like, never mind. Yeah. Take it back off. Sorry for your 3 hours of work, people.
Yeah. I mean, that happens, but like you said, you know.
You just know.
I mean, I think that the development of that, like, sort of gut feeling is super important for an artist. And a lot of times, especially early on, like, we don't trust it, or we don't necessarily know enough.
Yeah, and you have everyone telling you what they think. Yeah. And it's hard to, you know, just in the weeds a lot in the beginning. Yeah.
But it is nice to get to a place where you trust that instinct and you feel empowered enough to say, oh, yeah, I spent 3 hours recording this string section, but it's not the right thing. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And I honestly think that has so much to do with, you know, being a music fan and knowing what I love and why, and holding myself to the same standard. Knowing, you know, do I want to listen to this song? Right. What is happening with this track, you know?
And you don't necessarily ever want to go back and say, what was I thinking when
you
don't. Wrote or recorded that song?
I'm not saying I don't have a couple of those tracks where I hear them now and I'm like, the drums sound like they're just trying to catch up with me or whatever. Like, sometimes that happens, but...
I think that happens to everybody. But if you have the majority of your stuff that you don't have that uneasy feeling about, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, it's a good day to die. Yeah, regrets.
That's cool. So you're from the Midwest, right?
Yeah, I was born in Saskatchewan and grew up in North Dakota.
Oh, wow. So, did you get into music early on in your childhood?
Well, I grew up in North Dakota, like I said, but then we moved to New Mexico when I was 10. So my folks both played music a little bit. They listened to a ton of music. They love music. And so I listened to a ton of, I guess you'd call it, I mean, vocal kind of singer-songwriter. That term now is almost antiquated already, but
that means,
didn't exist then, you know. But you know, Merle Haggard, Grateful Dead, Bob Marley, George Harrison, the Beatles.
I mean, that to
Willie
me
Nelson,
is like they're singer-songwriters, but their energy is different than like a folk singer-songwriter.
Yeah, Paul Simon. You know, there's a lot of that music. Very melodic, you know. Lots of very unique voices. And then we moved to New Mexico, and that's when I really started playing, when I was 13.
I just visited New Mexico for the first time last year. I went to the Balloon Festival.
Oh, nice.
And then over to Santa Fe, and I thought it was really beautiful and cool and had a good vibe.
Yeah.
Did you like living in New Mexico?
I loved it, yeah. I still love going back.
Yeah.
It is a very special place.
It's so different than the Northeast, you know.
Yeah, the air quality.
Everything about it.
Everything about it. Very
good and bad, but
yeah.
Yeah, and then where did you go from there? Like, once you really started getting into music, did you say, "Hey, I need to go somewhere else to pursue this"?
Yeah, there was. I lived on a intentional community, or commune, for a while as a kid, and stayed close with all those folks, and I'm still close with a lot of the folks there. And one of the women, Kate Brown, a potter, I was friends with her daughters. Kate's sister is Sarah Brown, and she's a bass player who was in the Antones Blues Band in Austin for many years and played with lots of amazing musicians, including Bonnie Raitt for a while. And she would come visit, and I would regale her with the songs I was writing and learn songs from her boyfriend at the time, Steve James, who became my first, guitar god, who showed me how to play fingerpicking and bottleneck slide and changed my life. And I went to Austin, where they both were living, to record my first demo that came out in '94, my first cassette.
Yeah, cassettes.
Yeah, with
back in the day,
Sarah Brown and Dave Sanger at his studio. He was the drummer for Asleep at the Wheel. And through that, Dave signed me to his small indie label that he was starting called Lazy SOB Recordings. And nice. I made my first record, River Under the Road, which featured the whole band of Asleep at the Wheel. And I was off and running, and that was kind of the beginning for me.
You know, I read that you built your own guitar.
Mm-hmm.
What possessed you to do that, and how did you know how to do that?
Well, my parents had a school called the Down to Earth School, an alternative school, and they had alternative classes. Basically, whoever wanted to teach a class in the community would come and pitch it to my parents, and then if there were enough kids that wanted to take the class, they would get to teach it. And a gentle man named Don Musser came to teach astrology class. And he also his main job was as a luthier, making guitars that he sold.
Oh, wow.
Abroad and in California. Fine handmade guitars. And so I would ask him a million questions after class each week about guitars. And not about astrology, even though I also was curious about that and interested in that. And then that summer, he called me up and asked me if I wanted to apprentice with him and try to build my own guitar. And I was so overjoyed. I couldn't believe that. Really did not see that coming, because one of my friends who went to the school there, his stepdad was a doctor, and they had money. And we did not, and I knew that. I mean, the idea of getting one of Don's guitars was way out of my price range. And I was so happy for my friend that he was getting a guitar, and at the same time, I knew I'd never get one, you know? But right. I was so happy for him, and it was just like such a thing of beauty, you know? And then to have Don call me, and I just couldn't believe it. I was just so full of joy. So, so I started driving out to his homemade house in the desert every week to work on my guitar and learn about astrology, because he was not going to not teach me about that either.
Wow.
Yeah.
Both so interesting.
Yeah. I've had a very lucky life.
That's very, very cool. So you made that guitar. Did you ever make another one, or that was it?
No, that was it. Yeah, when I moved to Austin, I met Tom Ellis, another really gifted craftsman and also a very gentle man, very wise person who he makes Ellis mandolins, but he was not making them. He had a long break of not making mandolins, where he was primarily running an inlay company called Precision Pearl Inlay, which I do believe he still does now at the same time as doing the mandolins again. But I worked for him for a few years doing inlay on lots of instruments.
Oh, wow.
And that was a really great job. I love him. And then when I moved here to Brooklyn for a few years, I apprenticed with another great magician who does, or I think he's retired now, repairs, named Bob Jones, also a master.
Was that in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
What's the name of the shop?
He was working out of his own.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of really cool guitar, like vintage instrument and repair shops in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I was wondering. I'm like, oh, there's a really small world if it was one of those places. That's really, really cool. So how did that inform, like, what instrument is your main instrument now, and how did that sort of inform your choice of that?
It's still the guitar I made.
It is?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Junior is just
you made it
very
to last.
strong. Yep. Yep. She's really, really a thing of beauty.
That's awesome. You have a unique instrument.
Yeah. I love it.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And like you mentioned that you have a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of conversations with women about kind of like the challenges of being a mom and being, I guess, any kind of artist, a musician in particular, where you have to travel to share your art. I mean, what has been your experience being a mom in that situation?
Yeah, where to start, I don't know. It changed everything, but sort of it brought, again, it kind of challenged me in so many ways. And also limits turn out to be really positive and good in a lot of ways. I guess sort of like that busy people get more things done sort of thing. I would find myself fitting amazing amounts of things into an hour or two when she was napping,
Yes, master multitasker.
Yeah.
And efficient time user.
Well, and I mean, I guess I've been more prolific since she's born. I've made these last 2 records all during the day and, when she's at school.
That's so amazing because I think a lot of women feel like, having kids will like limit their career, limit their choices, create another challenge. And the fact that you have found a way to create something positive, plus you get to enjoy being with your daughter. I mean, that's really impressive. Yeah.
Well, I feel lots of things. I mean, I have this amazingly supportive label, Story Sound, and my wife is also equally amazing and works full-time as a film editor. And so I'm mostly the stay-at-home parent. And I also feel that deep, kind of resonating force within me, even more so having a child where it's like, okay, I am here. What am I here for? What am I doing right now? And I want to do my most with my time, And so, like what I was saying about this last record and the songs just being like, here they are. Let's do this right now. Because she gets out, I have to pick her up from the bus at 2:30 and I know it's here. Let's do it,
It is amazing too, like, sometimes people think like, oh, I have to go with the flow. Like if I'm not feeling my art, then it's not going to happen today. But I do feel like sometimes if you have those 2 hours to record or write or what have you, you find a way to kind of kick that energy in like more efficiently.
Yeah. Well, and just with all this buck stops here stuff with, with Trump and with so many paradigm shifts with, sexism and racism and so many people being like, no, just stop. No, Yeah. And that's it. I mean, there's no more time for waffling. I mean, I feel it so deeply as so many people do. And that's, if something needs to be said, we need to say it. And we need to, if you feel that urge, make it happen, and that's, I feel that energy force in me. And so there is no waiting.
Yeah. And I also feel like, I have 2 kids myself. They're adults now, but, I do feel like, that I want to be an example for them if I see something wrong or something that I can do to help other people or make things better or expose something crazy that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
I know they see me doing that, and that means something to them.
Yeah, and it's so hard sometimes to know if you're doing the right thing or enough, and I always wonder that. And to wonder that maybe is fine, but don't stop doing the things that you're compelled to do if they feel true and right,
I think like anything is better than nothing.
Yeah. I know.
And sometimes I feel like as women we're really hard on ourselves for what we don't do or what we can't do.
Yeah.
And we don't give ourselves enough credit for even anything that we do.
I mean, like right after Trump was elected, there was a swastika appeared a block away in the sidewalk from where I live. And I had to walk by it a few times to where I was like, no. And I got my friend, who had some cement to mix it and cover that up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, do what you feel. It might be small, but it might not be small.
Right. And you don't know what that that might mean to somebody else walking over that.
Yeah, and what is it? And that's the scary stuff, is that we just then start not noticing it anymore. I mean, all these things in our culture and our society that we don't know what to do about, and so we just get apathetic. You know,
it is overwhelming.
It is
sure.
overwhelming,
like,
but there are
like,
little
what can
things.
I do? Who knows? Like we look at all these big horrifying things, and you're right. Like even if there's something small that we can do, it's something we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might just be like, here's a little wet cement. Shoop, shoop, shoop.
Yeah.
You know?
You're right, though. I mean, I feel like especially, we live in a city where you're sort of taught to put up a wall when you walk down the street for various reasons. Mm-hmm. But, even like it registering in your brain, like, hey, that's wrong. I need to do something about it. That takes a little practice.
Yeah. Because you might not think you can. Or whatever,
Yeah.
Or someone else will take care of it. Honestly, that's what I kept thinking walking by it. And then at one point I was like, I can't believe someone hasn't covered that. Oh, who's someone?
Yeah.
I caught myself in that. You know what I mean? Some other person should be doing this.
Yo.
Well, wait a second. I'm the one having this thought,
Yeah, well... Good. I'm glad you did that.
Anyway, but that's not what I was looking for. But you know what I mean? It's like, I'm always wondering what should I be doing? What can I do more?
But I think, like you said, the more you do, the more it creates awareness in yourself. Like there are things I can do, and that you also recognize things more at a conscious level. Mm-hmm. Like so many things pass by your subconscious that that we just sort of. That don't register, I guess. And now I find it's like that with songwriting too. Like when you start listening to hear song lyrics or song titles and the things people say, becoming aware of that makes you hear them everywhere. Mm-hmm. But if you don't practice that, things just whiz by you and you never even think about it.
It's true.
It's just like that in many things in life, I guess.
Yeah, being present, the opportunity for really connecting with strangers every day is huge.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny, I read this, this is years ago, I read this book called The Power of Nice. And it's like a business book about using kindness in business and how you can benefit from being kind. Mm-hmm. And part of the suggestions at the end, there was like, actual like things you can try. And one of them was just like literally going out into the world and complimenting someone every day randomly about something. And it was so powerful to just like, be at the 7-Eleven and telling the cashier, oh, wow, her nails look beautiful or whatever. Like, how many of us get that every day? Almost nobody. And to be able to just spread that positivity and awareness, I think that's like a tiny thing that adds up in the world, So, so I'm like, I mean, ever since then, I talk to everybody and... like I said, in the city, you have to be a little bit aware, but I feel like it's more important than ever.
It is
to just like connect in some way.
Yeah, well, and it's also, I feel like it's one of those things that we don't think about in a full circle way, where like love or kindness, like it's not just about the recipient of those things. Like when you give kindness or allow that to come through you to someone, it's coming through you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And love too. Like when I feel love for my daughter, I'm feeling that love. Make sure she also hopefully receives that love that I'm feeling for her, but how lucky for me.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's all good, right? Good. And then maybe we also have that resonance together if she's feeling loved and I'm like, oh yeah, you get that I'm,
Yeah.
But it's all feelings are like that. I mean, same with with hate. If you're hating on someone, you're the one feeling that horrible. Who needs that?
Yeah.
I mean, really. It's like, there's another way to probably get away. I mean, not that it's always possible to avoid feeling that that feeling, that hate, that anger, but at the same time, it's like, wait a second, how else can I also get my point across and make change happen without making myself feel like crap?
Right.
Even though if that person, quote unquote, deserves it. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, especially I guess in our society, that I think we're not really taught about that, especially as kids. Like, it's not necessarily valued to learn how to focus on sharing your feelings in a way that's constructive.
I agree.
You know, I think in some places it is, and it has a lot to do with parents and their experience and what they share with their kids. But it's a little bit tough. But when you see examples of that, you're like, yeah, that's the right thing. We should all be doing that. So Anna, what are you working on now? Like, what's your... Are you creating new music? Are you touring in support of your recent release? What's happening with you?
I'm working on a lot of different things. I'm writing a lot. I'm touring a lot. I'm doing a lot of shows with Iris Dement, who is one of my heroines. She's a wise one and a total badass. Can I say that? I don't know what I can swears I can say. She's
Please do.
Just a real stand-up person in every way and so fun. So we've been doing a lot of work together and a lot of shows and traveling and yeah, I'm working on a couple different things. I can't really talk about them yet, but very different projects.
Surprise things.
Yeah. Yeah, very
different,
exciting,
but musical
fun,
projects?
but musical.
Yeah.
And lots of writing that might or might not turn into lyrics. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know.
And how do you feel about 2020? Is it going to be a good year? It's a new decade.
I feel like huge changes are happening.
I mean, astrologically, it's very different.
I suppose. Actually, I don't even really know, but I
thought maybe you remembered some of your teachings.
You know, I do engage in that world. I think I see it and feel it as a very poetic language, and it's very inspiring to me. But I'm not scientific about it per se.
Yeah.
I do find inspiration in it. But no, I think more like, crisis point, things are pretty heavy and intense, and transformation happens in times like that. And the fact that it's on such huge levels, I think also...
Yeah. It's like global.
It's global, and I feel like transformation is also happening and potentially could in a huge global way, and maybe is manifesting in that way. I mean,
for better or for worse.
I mean, hopefully, for better, because the crisis is happening for worse. So I feel like, energetically, spiritually, whatever you want to say, emotionally, I feel like that's available for a lot of people. And a lot of people are being moved to open up and with this desire to help others. And I want to believe that that's a potential.
Yeah. All good people do.
Yeah. And I think all people are good. And I think all people are struggling. And some people are further lost in their struggle than others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear your new secret projects and your unsecret projects. And so how can people find out where to see you, what's coming up, listen to what you have out there now?
Yeah, I have a bunch of tour dates, lots of festivals and stuff coming through. I'm really honored to be playing John Prine's All the Best Fest in the Dominican Republic in November, which with Bonnie Raitt and John Prine and Steve Earle, and it's going to be so fun. Iris Dement, it's going to be so fun, and lots of other really great festivals are coming through. And yeah, my website, just my name, annaegge.com.
Okay, we'll share that link.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And Story Sound Records site. Yeah, all the stuff with the recordings will be coming out.
Okay.
News. Updates.
Follow you, etc. Well, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura.
I'm really happy to meet you.
You too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Best with everything.
Thank you.